Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me for the second and tonight the last segment of the Stay at Home Show. Now, I'm going to be reading to you from Shaun Tales from Outer Suburbia. Before I start reading this, I just want to take a daily moment to check in on this little lady, the Decorah Eagle. Let's just take a look and see how she's doing today. Oh, what a majestic bird. What an excellent bird. But enough of her. Let's take a look at Shaun Tan's Tales from Outer Suburbia. Now, Shaun Tan is an Australian writer and author. He's done a lot of very cool stuff. I have not seen a great deal of his very cool stuff. I've seen this and a book that we have at our local library called The Arrival. And The Arrival is about the immigration experience. In particular, it's about the refugee experience. And it's all told without words. It's all in pictures. And this guy's an incredible artist. He's a very, very good artist, a very imaginative and strange artist. So I'll show you before I read the story. There's little drawings like all over the front page. That's really excellent. And his theme here is travel, and his table of contents, the page where he puts where everything is all post stamps. And the value of the post stamp is the page on which the story appears. Many of these are really, really good stories. Many of these are really, really good stories. But this one is the one I'm going to take a look with you folks today. That's on page 40. Let's jump up to it. And here we go. This is called Grandpa's Story. And for the first couple pages, there's only some grandpa-looking items that will perhaps be mentioned in the story. We've got, I'm on the wrong side, we've got an envelope here, and we've got an old shoe down here, and then up here we have an old watch. And this kind of watch is a stopwatch, or rather a pocket watch, sorry. Today, if you buy a modern watch that looks like this, it probably is a stopwatch, which is a timer. But this is just sort of a watch like you would wear on your wrist, except this is one that you stick in your pocket. Here we go, Grandpa's Story. You know that big hill you can see from your bedroom window, says Grandpa, pointing. Well, your grandma and I got married on the other side of it, long before you lot came along. Of course, weddings were more complicated in those days, not the short and sweet kind you see today. For a start, the bride and groom were sent away before the ceremony, and they were only allowed to have one photo taken upon leaving, and no more until they came back, which might be a long time later. That's why there are so many blank pages in our wedding album, the dark pages we call them. Lucky for us, the first picture came out good. Look at the family, all dressed up on the driveway. Look at your grandma there, as though she's just stepped out of a movie. Talk about stylish. After the photographer left, we were given a sealed envelope, a compass. I didn't look at the picture closely enough. We were given a sealed envelope, a compass, and traditional wedding boots. Hardy things they were, with steel caps. So here's where it clearly starts to get strange and not like what we would expect as a traditional wedding. Here is the sealed envelope. Here is the steel capped, or in Canada we would say steel toed wedding boots. And here, chunk, is the compass. And if we can look in closely, I don't know if it will focus, there we go, we can see that that is not time, but northeast, south, and west. We were given a sealed envelope, a compass, and traditional wedding boots. Hardy things they were, with steel caps. Each guest told us a special riddle, like a cryptic crossword clue. We had to listen hard and remember them all. Strange instructions that would supposedly make sense later on. We were mad keen to get started and figure it all out. We were really excited to get started and figure it all out. So we didn't hang around. Whoosh, we were off. Grandpa's a bit vague. It's not clear. Grandpa is a bit vague at this stage in his story, so it's not clear where they actually went. Somewhere past the factories and landfills, and beyond all the signs and roads. When we ask him to show us on a map, he simply shakes his head in an amused way, as if to say, "One day you'll know." He waves aside our further questions and continues, "We weren't allowed to open the envelope until we arrived. Inside was a list of objects we had to find before the end of the day, each corresponding to a clue. This was the scavenger hunt, always the most troublesome and feared part of any wedding. Well, we expected to be back home and dressed for the well-rehearsed vows in no time. Vows are the promises we make, and in this situation it would be, I promise to stay with you sick or healthy until I am dead. We expected to be back home and dressed for the well-rehearsed vows in no time. We were young and full of confidence, always in a hurry too. Of course, it was not too long before we ran into trouble. A whole lot of trouble. Frustratingly, Grandpa goes off to make a cup of tea at this point. We follow him to the kitchen and press for details. Grandpa just shrugs. It's hard to explain the terrible things that happened out there. In fact, the more I tell you, the less you will actually understand. Some things in life are like that. You have to find out for yourself. They were perilous times, dangerous times. But every setback only made us more determined. Scared? Sure, sometimes. But we had each other. That must be what it's all about, we thought. As long as we stick together, nothing can stop us. And now we have a picture, a 2-page picture of him heading out into this place. And let's get us centered here. So down here in the corner, we can see them in their car heading out into a strange and unknown land. A strange and unknown land, and a scary looking land. Let's take a look. Oh, we got some more pictures of their adventure. We see them going, they're going up, I'm on the wrong side, they're going up a steep, difficult hill, so this is a very challenging part of their young marriage, and they're losing things. Over here, they're losing their car. We see them run into terrible difficulties, but they're still here together. think we went, they got their car back, this side. They've got their car back, or they found their car, but they're running from what looks to be dangerous and wild television sets. But also, look, he's got a shovel. So that shows that this was part of the scavenger hunt too. And then if we move over here, we see them traveling through a very crowded area, dense city, and everywhere we look we see no vacancy. And over here, no, and no. Vacancy means an opening so that people can come and sleep there. So there's no openings for them to sleep anywhere. There's no rest and no comfort. And if we look in here, can I point to it? There it is. We can see there's monsters around too. There's dangers still around. Now here we see them in another strange place. They're crowded and trying to get through and surrounded by these things. And then over here we see them stuck in rainstorm. A rainstorm that's flooding their car. And now we are back to his story. And true enough, one by one, we found those objects on the list. It was hard work, and we had trouble remembering some of the clues, but there was a lot of happiness discovering so many small things in unexpected places. We tied everything to the rear bumper with wedding string in the customary way. So Shaun is telling a lot of funny stories here, or he's telling a very strange version of what it is like to be married with people, and it's told through a strange kind of dreamlike situation, and clearly nobody has to pass a whole bunch of penguin robots. But tying strings to the back of the car and often hanging cans from it it's a very old tradition that we have always done with when people get married. We don't do it so much these days because cars drive fast, cars drive in cities, and it makes pollution, it makes litter. But it was pretty common. It was common enough that when I was a child, I would see it being done sometimes, so that when they drive, all the cans are ching-diddling-diddling, making all kinds of sounds. We tied everything to the rear bumper with wedding string in the customary way. The sound of that rattling from the back of the car was very satisfying at first, but really started to get on our nerves, started to make us angry, irritated, after hours and hours of driving around. It was late by then, and we had a big problem, a really big problem. You see, the last two objects on our list seemed impossible to find, and I think both of us were beginning to wonder if they even existed. Yet we couldn't return unless we found them. We searched and searched, racked our brains, and did everything we were supposed to. Still nothing. Before I continue, let's take a look at the items that he has collected here, because this tells us some of the meaning of Grandpa's story, perhaps. So we have here, starting from this side, we have a teapot, we have a birdhouse, we have a key, we have an alarm clock, a telephone, a cooking pot, a book, an iron, a baby bottle, a toy bear, a lock, and a gift. Aha! We became anxious, desperate, obsessed, driving farther and faster, not thinking about where we were going. Eventually, we found ourselves lost in a vast magnetic desert, unable to get a reliable compass bearing. Desert, of course, I think everybody knows a desert is a hot sandy area, but magnetic means it pulls on magnets. I suppose that's kind of an obvious word if I say magnet in there. But okay, spent too long on that sentence. My own old grandpa once spoke of a place, all lovers. This is still grandpa speaking about his own grandfather. My own old grandpa once spoke of a place all lovers are doomed to visit at least once. Maybe this was what he was talking about, I thought. It was terrible. The sun was creeping below the horizon. We would never make it back in time for the vows. We'd missed our big moment. Our smiles vanished. We stopped holding hands, and then, bang! The back tire burst on a pointy rock. Well, that was it. Your grandma leapt out, slammed the door furiously, and started blaming me for everything. I leapt out, slammed the door furiously, and started blaming her for everything. We shouted and yelled and carried on, and said a few things we've since lived to regret. Well, you know what it's like when your grandma and I have one of our events. Then there was a long and terrible silence, of a kind we had never known before. We refused to even look at each other. It was like all the stones in that desert went down our throats and into our hearts. We wanted to just sink into the ground and stay there forever. And here we have a picture of them in that desert with their car broke down. And look at all the birds. Isn't that pretty? Coming out of the trunk. Let me look at that very closely. Are they coming in or are they going out? It's hard to tell. But we see the grandpa is here and he's angry, frustrated. She's here, she's in despair. Of course, as the light faded and the temperature dropped, we soon realized we would have to do something quick, smart, if we were to have any hope of returning to civilization. And we'd have to do it together. The spare tire, which we'd never needed before, was somehow rusted into the back of the car. It required the leverage of our combined weight on a crowbar to budge it. So Grandpa and his wife had to work together. Grandpa and Grandma had to work together to push on the crowbar to lift this tire out. With one almighty heave, it finally popped free. Our sense of relief was overwhelming. We almost didn't notice something twinkling in the hollow, muddy pan of the car's boot. In Australia, when they say boot, in Canada, we would say trunk, the part in the car where you store stuff. We noticed something twinkling in the hollow, muddy pan of the car's boot, twinkling just like stars. Well, we rinsed off the mud with the last of the drinking water and still couldn't believe our eyes. Two of the most perfect rings you ever saw. If you don't believe me, have a look at this. And Grandpa holds up his hand with a ring on it. And here we can take a look at the rings that Grandpa found. From that moment on, we picked a random direction and took off at top speed with a determination that could make any destination turn up on the far side of a bug-plastered windscreen. And sure enough, as we crested that last big hill, we could see all the lights of the outer suburbs unfold before us. Streets like old friends welcoming us home. From that moment on, From that moment, oh, sorry. By the time we pulled into the driveway, there was just enough time to shower, dress, exchange our vows, and do all that ceremonial stuff we had rehearsed. It was as if we had been away for only a couple hours, and everything was normal, with everyone saying congratulations over and over. Your grandma and I kept looking at each other as though we had just returned from another planet. Here's a picture of them driving back into their suburb, and here we see the strings and the cans and stuff all hanging behind them. Anyway, that's pretty much it. The story of how we got married. Beyond that big hill you can see from the window, long before you lot came along. Grandpa shuffles off to the toilet, and then to check on his fruit trees. Admittedly, we are skeptical about everything we've heard. We're not sure whether we should believe Grandpa, particularly because Grandpa can have a very lively imagination. There's only one thing to do. Ask Grandma. Well, this says Grandma speaking, well, you know, I rarely agree with your grandpa's account of anything, she tells us. It's hard to agree with his version of a story, she says. But in this case, I'll make a rare exception. And she shows us the other ring they found under the spare tire out in the desert. Shaun Tan, Tales from Outer Suburbia. And that was a very nice story. Let's look at a few more pictures here. I just want to show you a couple. Especially... Nope. I should be showing just a bunch. I will show you a variety here. So this is from another story called, I think it was called Nick. Let's see what the name was. Eric. This is from a short story called Eric about a foreign exchange student. That's a good story. We have... I like this one a lot. This is a sad story for Undertow, and this is about a little boy who lives in this house, and one day a manatee appears on his lawn. He's nowhere near the ocean, and nobody knows how this manatee got here. And everybody is all concerned with taking this manatee off the lawn, getting it to a safe place and rescuing it and all this. But just like Grandpa told us a story about going off to a really strange, bizarre place, which is really a story about living through life's challenges with a partner, this is a story about an abused child, about a child who lives in a home where parents are fighting all the time and always shouting hate. It's a very good story. Many of these are very good stories. Not sure right away what story this one is for, but I will show it because it's a different art style than the drawings in the story we had just read. And one more. I'm looking for the dogs. Okay, I'm not going to find the one more because it's taking me too long. But that was Shaun Tan. That was from Tales from Outer Suburbia and the story Grandpa's Story. It's a nice story. It's a little bit of a strange story, but it is a story with a lot of heart, I think. And that will do it for us for the Stay at Home Show Episode 3. There will be no third segment tonight. This was the last segment. If you have any ideas, if you have anything that you would like me to talk about, or anything you would like to see me doing, please just either let me know in the comments or contact me any ways that you already know how. This could be something about learning English, something about grammar, something about just using language in certain situations. If there's anything in particular you would like me to read, or if there's anything in particular you would like me to talk about, please just let me know and I'll be happy to look into things. That is it for the Stay at Home Show. Thank you all very much for joining me. Give a thumbs up in the comment, or give a thumbs up below. That helps things, I think. That's the rumor. And that is it. Have a lovely night, everybody, and see you next time. I'll be on tomorrow, 5 o'clock.